instead of thinking about where you are and where you need to get to, you need to think about who you are and who you need to become, because that change is instantaneous. You can't change your circumstance immediately, but you can change who you are immediately. That's our superhuman gift.
Hey guys, welcome to the AlignUs Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nikhil Sharma, and I'm so grateful to have you guys here with us today. In today's podcast, we're going to be discussing the topic, how to create a plan once you have your intentions set. Welcome, guys. Now let's get into it.
So today, we want to chop it up, mix it up about, okay, once you've gotten started with whatever endeavor it is that you're working on, how do you take actionable steps and actually create what we know as progress or momentum? And this is something that this is probably more important than starting. I think it's more important than starting. I know getting started is extremely difficult to do. And a lot of us tend to get started, but then once we get started, we fizzle out quickly because we don't know that we got to move quickly. Speed is everything. So yeah, I wanna give my personal experience with the topic, and then I'll just bounce it over to you guys, and just add some value for the people. So when it comes to getting started, and I guess I'll relate it to business. I relate it to creating something of substantial value. I've always been someone that has been a dreamer. I've always wanted to, like at one point, I wanted to be a chef. During my track career, I wanted to, achieve certain times. I've always wanted to do something. So that's obviously step number one, is you have to know what you want. Um, you have to take the time to actually visualize and to feel exactly what you want. But once you've done that, then what? I actually read funny, I got the book right here, Think and Grow Rich, that you need your actionable steps ready on hand at all times. And that's something that we must do. We must do. So it doesn't really matter what that first step is. That's the crazy thing. Let's say that you want to, create an LLC that serves underprivileged youth in urban cities or something like this. Okay, you have the idea, you know exactly what you want, but you don't know what to do. Well, what's the first step? You probably need to research, who already is serving them and align yourself with them. Maybe that's the first actionable step. And I heard this quote that said, when you have too many options, that gives you anxiety. When you have too few options, that brings you sadness and you feel hopeless. And a lot of people hit the anxiety portion because they begin to skip steps. They skip the steps. So, you have this incredible idea. You feel so elated. You have this optimism that is like, oh, I'm about to conquer the world. But then you start thinking about all the things that need to be done. Oh, I have to do this and I have to do this and then I have to do that. How am I going to do this? You begin to spread yourself thin before you even take the first step. And once you take that first step, we call this we call this informed pessimism. You become a pessimist of your own success because now you're looking at everything that needs to be done as opposed to taking that first necessary step. And what happens? This informed pessimism means you never get started. So you crash and burn after you've had the great idea. Boom, it's over with. And then what happens again? You have your next idea. And then it happens again. And it's this loop. It's just this loop, this reoccurring cycle. So what I would like to suggest is taking the first step as quickly as possible and completing it, because not only do you need to get started, but you need to build the self-confidence. You need to be able to trust yourself. You need to say, okay, look at what I have done. And it doesn't have to be something that you're going to parade around like, hey, I've done this, but it does need to be something that's going to get the ball rolling, and it's going to lead you to your first official problem or roadblock. That's what the learning experience, that's what life is all about. Life is about problem solving, putting yourself in situations where you got to use this thing up here and create alternatives and opportunities for yourself. So taking that first step. So I actually wrote down some notes um, to get a little bit more specific on what I'm speaking about. Uh, and for the people, that will watch this eventually, once you do have that idea, I recommend you need to reverse engineer. And I kind of already said this. You need to put yourself mentally and put it on paper, write it down with a pen. You need to know exactly what you want, where you want to be. You want to reverse engineer. So if you want to serve the underprivileged youth in an urban city, cool, write that down. The next step, because we're working from the front or the top down, the next step is you need to ask yourself who you must become. The reason I say who you must become is because we create this, it's silly, but we create this distance. It's this wall from where we are to where we have to get to, right? When instead of thinking about where you are and where you need to get to, you need to think about who you are and who you need to become, because that change is instantaneous. You can't change your circumstance immediately, but you can change who you are immediately. That's our superhuman gift. We can do that. So knowing who you need to be is step number two. Once you've reversed engineered, you figured out, okay, this is my first actionable step that I need to take. Simultaneous to that, you need to think about who you must become. Make that adjustment. And that's going to take some reinforcement. You're going to slip up. You're going to screw up a few times. But so what? Always remember who you must become. Third, look at my apologies. Look at where you are. Okay, I want to serve this group. I don't have the resources. I know I need those resources. Okay, so this is where you're at right now. This is your first official roadblock. This is when it's time to say, okay, well, how can I get the network? How can I get the resources? How can I, it's always raining opportunities in life. It's pouring every single day. How do you get rained on? How do you get wet by opportunity? You have to stand in the way of it. So that's step number three. And you just wash, rinse, and repeat these steps, and you just allow life to take you on that ride. And it's funny because what you think you want is usually not exactly what you'll get. Life will give you tenfold of what you want just because you've had that faith, whether you believe in God or not, believing in yourself and taking those actionable steps and becoming who you need to be. That's the most important part. So I know that was an earful, that was a lot, but I put some thought into that, and I thought about, what are the things that I personally have done for myself to achieve the success that I've achieved in my industry. So I will bounce the ball on over to you fellas and listen.
Well, first of all, that was great. I'm very system oriented, and the fact that you broke that down and simplified that down into 3 steps was amazing. I'm a true believer in visualization and knowing what you want, and you had that at step 1. So to revisit, know what you want and visualize it. Number 2, know who you must become to achieve what you want. And then number 3, look at where you are and evaluate it. And I think number 3 is essential, because yes, it's important to believe. Yes, it's important to visualize, but at the same time, look at what you have around you. Look at the quote unquote reality of what you have to work with. And yes, I do believe that you can create your reality, but I do think that you have to evaluate what's happening around you and what you have access to, and figure out what you don't have, so you can create the resources that you do need to achieve that goal. You do need to evaluate who you are as a person. What habits do you have? Are the habits that you have conducive to who you're becoming or who you need to be? Or are they detrimental to what you're trying to achieve? I'm not sure which mentor or coach gave me this piece of advice, but he told me that it's just as important to know the things that you shouldn't be doing in life to hit your goal, compared to the things that you do need to be doing. Because if you make a list of all the habits and things that you shouldn't be doing, that's a great way to start. Those are things that you're just preventing yourself from doing, versus, okay, I have to do this. This will take me 5 minutes. This will take me, 30 minutes. But if you just make a list of things you don't need to do, those don't take any time. That just takes intentionality and focus. So I think that the list was perfect. I think it gives people a good starting point as far as how to get started. And I'm definitely going to do some research on the informed pessimism, because that was the first time that that phrase was actually introduced to me. I'm familiar with pessimism versus optimism, and I've always been an extreme optimist and always thinking what's the best thing that could happen instead of what's the worst thing that can happen. I think that's a societal thing. I think society always thinks, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then they literally attract that into their existence and their reality. But I'm definitely going to be looking into that informed pessimism. So I loved it. I loved the steps. I thought it's very, very simplified, and it was great, man.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Just, really valid and great points here. I know for myself, well, when I was starting AlignUs, it was, definitely a daunting task, very overwhelming to think about what when we come up with these ideas, they all seem so great. And then you see like what the potential can be. And it can become extremely, extremely like, overwhelming. And it's like, how am I going to get there? What do I do next? Like, how am I going to develop this app? Where are the resources going to come from? It's a lot that starts running through your mind. And it's usually right at that moment, right, where a lot of people can shut down, because remember, when we're coming out of when we're trying to change, literally the new ideas that are coming into our prefrontal cortex, that is causing us to expend a lot of energy, right? And it puts us like in a brain fog, and that's because our bodies are conditioned and our brains are conditioned to be a certain way and to be in the comfort zone that they need to be in. The issue is that we need to break. How do we break out of that? And that's first understanding, like, hey, this change, this journey that you have with the idea, it's going to take some time. Like you need to be a little bit patient with yourself, patient with it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it doesn't mean that you stop like doing these ideas. It just means that you need to just be cognizant of your brain, body, mind, all those things being aligned with what needs to happen, going forward. So when I did that, it helped me at least start pushing forward. And then I was like, okay, what do I need to do? Or how do I make my dream come true? And the one thing I never used to do before, which I realized I needed to do, was to ask for help, or to ask and lean on people who have experience in this realm, And a lot of times, again, I'm just speaking for myself. I just felt like I needed to do everything by myself, or figure it out on my own, even though I'm the type of guy that would help anybody out, right? But oftentimes we don't like to ask for help because we feel like that's weak, and whatever the reasons are. But I knew that I was approaching an endeavor that I didn't have much idea about. Like, I have an idea, but it doesn't mean that I know like all the ins and outs of how to make that idea, come to fruition. But there are people out there that I knew that I needed, that I could maybe rely on or go to and ask for their help. So, that's what I did. I slowly started, talking with people who I trusted, and that's another important thing on this journey, is that when you're coming with an idea, like you said, Chris, you don't want to tell everybody about, what you have in mind, because you yourself still need to figure that out, right? Like it takes time to get the pieces that you want all fit together. But so I did that, and that started giving me some foundation, about, hey, like you have a good idea, but have you thought about these things? So looking for guidance was very important, and one of the first couple steps that I certainly needed to do while I was creating this idea. And for me, that other guidance, because I'm not in the business world, and I feel like a lot of people aren't into business, or like right away, I had to get an executive coach. And fortunately, I got a great one at Moxie, and she was so foundational for me because again, I wasn't taught a lot of these skills in medical school, but I feel like the way that she had, kind of coached me up was about, Nick, okay, yes, what are the values? Like the first thing was like, what are the values of your company that you're trying to start? And then she was like, what are your values? And it was kind of like we were creating these foundational pillars to better assess like who I am as an individual, and then who like what the company, what AlignUs's values are. And we did the same thing with me about like character strengths. So a lot of the first steps in my journey of creating the idea that I have come up with has been figuring out who I am first. Like, what are my values? What are my character strengths? Because from that, like, base, and when you match your mind, which is your thoughts, your heart, emotions, and your gut and your instincts for one purpose, for one dream, everything has to be aligned. It can't be anything external. It has to be internally driven. And when you can do that, whatever you create from that alignment is going to be powerful, and so I feel like she had helped me kind of center myself, get myself aligned, figure out who I was, because that better helped me figure out the next steps of where AlignUs needed to go. And so then I thought that was at least those were the first couple of things that I felt were important on the journey. And it's important, really important to understand that change is very hard on us. It's not something that's easy. It's easy for us to shut down and be like, this is a dumb idea. It's overwhelming. I see a lot of other different companies that are doing something similar. It's easy to be like, it's easy to get turned off by, hey, no one's going to really want to do this. There's already something similar out there like that, even though there's not, right? So there's a lot of self-talk that you have to battle your way through. But again, it's a step-by-step journey. And then it's just about writing down. I had a journal, which I started journaling, which was, again, another transformative piece. And when you have a journal and you're starting to write down small things you need to do, you realize those things start accumulating and you're making progress. And over time, that progress turns into, all of a sudden there's a website, you have like a team, everyone's working together, you have a social media page. It's really beautiful what can happen. But just focusing on what you can accomplish today, and not be future tripping, about, oh my God, how am I going to get funding? How am I going to get this? That's where I shut down. But it's step by step.
Perfect. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I love that you mentioned the values. You said Moxie helped you out with the values and thinking about, okay, well, yeah, what does AlignUs, values stand for? And that just made me want to specify a little bit in that list that we came up with early on. Once again, the list was, we want to reverse engineer defining your end goal. Number 2 was deciding who you must become. Number 3 was figuring out where you are currently and taking that first step. I want to add in what you said, Nick, about your values. When I say who you must become, because this is something I missed for years. It's not a new concept to me that you have to understand who you must be in order to achieve a goal. But when you don't know what the values are of that person that you must become, you won't manifest or achieve anything. And understanding what your values are, it allows you to say no. Because if you say yes to everything, like, you're going against what you believe in. So that, I think, is probably the most pivotal piece, is understanding your values. What do you value? Like that. I love that you said that. I actually have a creed for I do, like,
That's crazy because I just wrote one. I have it literally right next to
really?
Yeah, I have to read it to you guys later.
Yeah, I read mine to my son every day when I drive him to school. It's called the Garner Creed. Yeah. I got to process.
Good.
Process was really amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so great that Nick, you brought up a great point. When you are truly tuned into yourself and you're really trying to make things happen, you try to do everything yourself. And I was literally just talking about this yesterday. One transformative period of my life that changed everything for me was when I realized I didn't have to wear multiple hats. Uh, yes, you can do it by yourself, but number one, it slows you down. It gets you very anxious because now you have all these different things that you know need to be done and you think you have to do it alone. But number three, it's very time consuming. It's very time consuming and very energetically draining. So the minute that you realize that you're abundant and you're in an environment of abundance and people that can assist you and guide you and help you meet your goal, that's when everything changed. Because then you're not just selfishly thinking that, okay, if I want to do this, I'm gonna have to do this all by myself, bootstrap. And that's the only way it gets done. To wait, like this is a great opportunity. You know, maybe someone else could benefit a lot by being a part of a team that is working towards this goal. And once you make that mindset shift, once you change that idea that it has to be done alone, I mean, it's a game changer. So that definitely resonated. I went through that phase where I tried to do everything myself, and I'm a very talented person. I know that I learned very quickly. So if there was something that I couldn't do, I would learn it, and then it's like, okay, it's just another thing that I know how to do. But that list would build and build and build, and the next thing you know, I'm trying to do everything myself, and it was very stressful. Um, I think you said it earlier, Chris, that you can either get very anxious or very depressed when it comes to options. And when you have tons of options, you know, it's like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. You get very, very anxious from it versus like you don't have any options, like, oh, what am I going to do? And then you get depressed. So that, I mean, you guys have both locked in on some gems today that people could really benefit from and really utilize to gain traction in their lives and getting closer to their goals. So yeah, that was amazing, guys.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. So, I mean, I guess with all that being said, because this is probably for me, if I were just a viewer or a listener, I would want to take the information that we've provided so far, process it and put my spin on it and like take the action. So I guess this is a great time to set up what we'll be speaking about in the next meeting. So we've spoken about the importance of getting started. Today we spoke about, okay, you've had the idea. How can you make progress and gain momentum? I think it'd be really cool to dive deeper into what you just said, Kevin, about, or both of you just said it, not having to do things alone and understanding the importance of partnership, and not only the importance of partnership, but how to go about partnership. Because Nick, you said it earlier, and I agree, but I also disagree, and I want to agree with you 100%. You spoke about you spoke about ideas and kind of speaking on your ideas. Um, you know, to others. And it's like common, you know, we always hear it like, oh, you know, don't just go telling everyone your ideas. And it makes perfect sense because, you know, people are going to always remember the things that you said you would do that you didn't do. And that takes a toll, a mental toll on you. Now, the reason that I say I slightly disagree is because I think that for some, um, it builds somewhat of an edge, you know, to say, hey, I spoke about this. I have to, you know, hold myself accountable. I don't want to get too deep. Maybe this is something we can speak on next week. But yeah, so I think it'd be cool next week if we spoke about partnership, how to go about it, the benefits, and maybe some of the things that we want to look out for in partnership, you know, that we don't want, I guess, impeding on our journey.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny that you brought that up. I actually agree with both of you all. And I told you this the other day, Chris, I'm very emotional. So I'm trying not to get emotional. I'm talking about this, but I've always been a very creative person, optimistic, like I told you. And I always had great plans, great dreams. And to Nick's account and testament, I shared those ideas with people. So I know where you're coming from when it comes to, if you're really trying to manifest something and make something happen, keep it to the chest until you gain some momentum, gain some traction, because, people can put their negativity,
Yeah,
their
that's it.
fears and
That's
all
why
that into you.
it's
And
negativity.
I've literally stopped in my tracks multiple times and had great opportunities, and they just literally went right through my hands because I allowed someone else's fears to mess me up.
Like for instance, yeah, I agree. Like I agree. Yeah. That's what I was saying.
But most recently, to what you're saying, Chris, I've realized how important it is to speak the things that you're trying to achieve, and that you have to speak things into existence. Like, you literally have to say it, because that way your brain is registering, it's processing it. And you have to begin thinking about it and visualizing it. And if you don't speak it because you're so fearful of it, it's gonna have less energy with it to actually, gain momentum. So I understand both sides. I've been on both sides. Now I'm more on the side of, speaking it, but also being very strategic about who I speak it to. Because yes, I will speak it, but based on someone's energy, based on their own, what's the word that I'm looking for? Their doubts and their limitation, their mindset limitations. There's certain people I would never share the things that I have going on in my life with, because they will pinpoint and find everything wrong with the idea. And I don't want that energy or negativity whatsoever. So yes, I will keep it to the chest and not tell anyone or certain people about certain investments and ventures and whatnot. But then at the same time, I do know the importance of speaking it into existence and, being sure to share it with people and letting people know what I am working on. If I see that they're open-minded, that's the word that I was thinking about earlier. It's very important to have open-minded individuals who don't have these ceilings of limitations, and they're not going to be pouring their negativity and doubts into you. So I definitely understand both sides. I know you wanted to say something, Nick.
No, I was just you kind of covered it. It's basically, one of those things where people can have negative things to say about your pursuit. And, there's no doubt that I heard that, especially from family members who are from a different, like, a generational time period, where they feel like you have a fixed route, or you should be doing a certain thing. And change for them is like, ludicrous. Like, at least in my case, going from a physician to business in a completely different world. You can imagine how much, like, negativity I was hearing, or like, are you crazy? Like as if I can't, I'm not practicing, or as if I can't practice medicine at any point whenever I feel to choose to do so. However, right now, this is a different way for me healing. Anyway, so that's why in certain situations, I think we have to be mindful of who we're speaking it to, until you have fire and stream going. Because now when I show up at home and I show my dad all these different things, and my aunts or whatever, they're like taken back, like, wow, this is incredible, like, wow, you're doing something really great. But in the, it's just, again, and we can talk about this more tomorrow, but there's a lot that has to do with, staying in your purpose, and manifesting, and being mindful of who you're sharing this with, and who you're trusting.
Definitely.
Thank you guys for tuning in to today's podcast. Until next week, peace.